I want to thank my colleague from Virginia, Senator Warner, and other colleagues who are joining together to support the proposal that we are putting forward today. But I think we should all say that the best way to make sure that federal employees, all federal employees, get paid and that the American people get the benefit of their services is to reopen the federal government and do it now, which is why I and my Democratic colleagues have voted 7 times now to reopen the government without giving Donald Trump a blank check and while making sure that we prevent a health care crisis in this country when people's health care premiums and costs go through the roof. Because when Republicans passed their so-called big, beautiful bill, they extended the tax breaks for billionaires and very wealthy people. The one tax cut they did not extend was the one that allows middle-class families to afford health insurance. And so they left in place a ticking time bomb that's going off now. We'd like to defuse that time bomb. Instead of negotiating on that, the president has been AWOL. He has been engaged in discussions overseas regarding the Middle East, been on the phone a lot with Vladimir Putin. That's all good, but you would think the President of the United States could carve out just a little time to help reopen the government, to have a negotiation on reopening the federal government. Instead, he's bringing down Republican members of the House and Senate to the White House and whining and dining them and patting them on the back and saying, good job for, keeping this government shut down and not entering into a negotiation to bring it to a close. And of course, our House colleagues, the Speaker of the House, Speaker Johnson, has essentially got the House on a 5-week now, I don't know if we're on 6 weeks, paid vacation. I mean, they are AWOL here in the middle of this shutdown. What is the president focused on? He's asking the Justice Department to pay him $230 million for legal bills, right, directly into his pocket. He's talking about giving his buddy in Argentina a $20 billion taxpayer bailout while farmers across the country are getting hit hard because they can't sell their soybeans to China. And he's demolishing the East Wing of the White House, which is a metaphor for what he is doing to the country and people who worked for him to get him elected. I mean, he's betraying the very people he said he was going to stand up for when he said he was going to focus on prices and costs. And yet, when it comes to trying to just prevent this huge spike in healthcare costs that our people are experiencing, the president doesn't want to talk about it. So we should not be punishing federal employees for something they had nothing to do with. They're not responsible. They're innocent bystanders. They all want to get back on the job and provide services to the American people. And I'll be putting forth a proposal to say that they should not be punished and they should be paid. Now, we'll hear later today, we're going to be taking up here in the Senate a piece of legislation from Senator Johnson. And that proposal would pay federal employees who are currently working right now. Our proposal doesn't discriminate among federal employees. And here's the really dangerous part, I would argue, about Senator Johnson's proposal. We have a president, President Trump, who along with Russ Vought, who's his guy in the cockpit at OMB, this is the guy who said publicly that he wanted to inflict trauma, that's his word, not mine, inflict trauma on the federal workforce. If you allow them to decide who they're going to keep on the job in the federal government and who they're going to pay, you're giving them also a blank check as to who they're going to send home and who they're going to punish by not paying. That's what they've been doing. Much of what they've been doing is illegal. In fact, we have a federal court in California that's already said that their layoffs of some of the federal employees and some of the agencies are illegal. But if you just let them decide who's going to get paid and who's not, you weaponize that illegality. You weaponize the federal government. And by the way, and I think we all know this, if President Trump gets to keep the folks he wants on the job and pay the folks that he wants who are on the job and nobody else, he'll have even less incentive to end the government shutdown. He'll have the government he wants, not the one that has been supported on a bipartisan basis by the United States Congress. So giving the president a blank check to decide which federal employees to punish and which ones not to punish is a very dangerous thing at this moment. That's why the proposal I'm putting forward, and Senator Peters will have an even narrower version that he will be put forward if our Republican colleagues don't support the one that I'm advancing, along with Senator Warner, Senator Kaine, Senator Alsobrooks, and others. These proposals say that federal employees should not be punished. Now, we've already made that decision. We've already made that decision as a Congress in the past. During the first Trump shutdown, that was the 35-day Trump shutdown. During that shutdown, Senator Cardin, myself, and others, we passed a piece of legislation that was signed by the president that says at the end of a shutdown, federal employees get fully paid. They're held harmless. Why did we decide to do that? Because we collectively made the right decision that federal employees who have nothing to do with the government shutdown should not be the ones punished for something they were not culpable in. That was the right decision. What my proposal and our proposal will do is based on that idea that no federal employee should be punished for something they had nothing to do with. And not only should they get repaid at the end of this, but why would we say to them that you can't have enough pay to make your electric bills, or pay your water bills, or provide for your family? Why should federal employees be the ones who are punished for the government shutdown? Why should they be the ones that have to overdraft their bank accounts, be penalized for that? That's not fair. So the proposals that we're putting forward say that in this government shutdown, federal employees, and yes, certain federal contractors who have nothing to do with this political situation that we face, they should not be the ones to bear the burden. And we certainly shouldn't set up a system where the President of the United States gets to decide what agencies to shut down, what they can open, who to pay and who not to pay, who to punish, who not to punish. That just gives him a blank check to put in place political cronies and pay them, and send home hardworking civil servants who perform important functions. So that's what our proposal will do. And for any of our colleagues, regardless of the side of the aisle, who agree that federal employees should not be the ones who are punished for something they got nothing to do with, I hope we'll all agree to support this measure. Now, I don't know if Mr. President, Senator Peters wants to talk at all on this particular proposal. He's going to be talking on the next proposal. I know that some of my colleagues are on the way to the floor as we speak. Senator Kaine and others. And I will, when they arrive, I will return the floor to them to have say their piece. But at this time, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to the immediate consideration of S. 3039, introduced earlier today, that the bill be read a third time and passed, and the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Is there objection?
Mr. President.
Senator from Wisconsin.
Reserving the right to object. Mr. President, I've come here today on the floor in good faith. I've come here not to argue. I've come here trying to find agreement. And I've listened to the senator from Virginia, now the senator from Maryland, and I have to say, I don't know exactly what percentage, but probably 95, 98% of what they've said, I agree with. Now, I do have to point out, and this would be the most, I would say this is a partisan comment. We have voted now 12 times on a measure that would open up government. It's what the House passed is a clean CR, similar if not identical to what happened 13 times during the Biden administration, just a clean CR to open up the government at President Biden's levels, funding levels that Democrats voted for. By the way, House Republicans could have come with a table, a CR with $1.5 trillion of spending reductions to match the $1.5 trillion of spending increase the Democrats wanted. And now there'd be areas of compromise. But the House Republicans basically said, here's the deal. Let's not shut down government. But let's not make federal government workers pay for our dysfunction. So they passed a clean CR at President Biden's funding levels. So again, that's been voted down 12 times, regrettably. But let me set that aside. I found out about the Senator from Maryland's proposal last night. I got the language this morning. I've got the bill here. And first of all, I kind of chuckled because the name of the bill is I've actually got the true Warren Buffett tax, and we ought to talk about that later on. You might find that interesting. But so he's taken my bill, the Shutdown Fairness Act. Now his bill is the true Shutdown Fairness Act. And again, I haven't done a word count comparison, but it's probably like 95+% of the Shutdown Fairness Act. That's a good thing. That shows there's a lot of areas of agreement. I come from the private sector. You don't get a whole lot accomplished arguing all the time. It's all about finding areas of agreement. I got a product, you want to buy it, now we'll haggle over the price. Okay, so I got a product, you want to buy it, now we need to haggle over the price. Now, the three areas of the differences in these bills, I think I've got this right. I asked the Senator from Maryland to confirm that. Your bill is only for this fiscal year. My bill would just end this, punishing federal workers for our dysfunction forever. I mean, I think we should make it permanent. The Senator from Maryland's bill includes furloughed employees. Now, the fact of the matter is, when all this is said and done, when we finally end this dysfunction, we fund government through an appropriation, because the 2019 Government Fair Transparency or Fair Treatment Act, the Government Fair Treatment Act, they'll get paid anyway. So my bill is obviously targeted to the people we're forcing to work, but I'm not necessarily opposed to paying furloughed workers as well. That's something we can talk about, okay? The last difference is it limits reduction in force. Now, I come from the private sector. Nobody likes to terminate employees. Nobody. But in the private sector, when a business is facing bankruptcy, sometimes business owners are forced to do that to preserve the other jobs. The federal government is $38 trillion in debt. I don't think we should limit the president's ability, the chief executive's ability to properly manage the federal government and make the tough decisions sometimes to reduce the workforce. Cut out some government functions. But again, that's something we can talk about. So again, I think, in fairness of the more than 2 million in federal employees that are now being forced to work because they're termed accepted, but that means they're essential. They're protecting our nation. They're protecting our safety and security. They're writing Social Security checks. To see that they get their paycheck so they don't have to work DoorDash, so they don't have to go to food banks, so they're not under that stress. I am asking in good faith, let's figure out how to get that done. Now, I mean, I could propose, take this, I'll change the name of mine, by the way, if you want to call it the true, because I think it's the true Shutdown Fairness Act. I would be, today, right now, I'd be willing to add furloughed workers, because we're going to pay them anyway. would you, I'm just asking, I mean, would you substitute your bill, take my bill, substitute it in? I've actually got my staff to write the language to do this. Red line is probably not ready for prime time. We really need to get through Ledge Council, that kind of stuff. But would you take my bill, add furloughed workers, say it's a done deal? Is that something you'd accept here today?
I'm happy to, if you're yielding the floor to me.
Yes.
The short answer is we do want to pay all federal employees because none of them should be punished. But we also don't want them to be fired and riffed during this period of time. I mean, you said in the private sector, people don't like to fire employees. I know, Senator, you've read the remarks of Russ Vought, the head of OMB. He wants to visit, quote, trauma on federal employees, and he wants to fire a lot of them. He has said so.
That's, again,
but that's an important piece here, right?
So, Senator, again, I'm trying to keep this. Let's not argue, okay? Let's focus on areas of agreement. So even reduction in force. Okay, again, I think we probably have a philosophical agreement there. I'm not associating myself with anybody else's remarks. I'm just talking about that's something that I think reasonable people can disagree with. And I think reasonable people can come to an accommodation. Again, when we're talking about making sure that 2.8, I think is about the number, 2.8 million federal employees aren't worried about getting a next paycheck. I mean, that so overwhelms quite honestly, the smaller differences about the length of the bill or, what reduction in force. Again, and I'm willing to come a long way.
Senator,
I'm willing to come a long way in terms of including furloughed workers. So again, what I'm suggesting is the way to do it. And by the way, this could be a wonderful example for this body. Working on a piece of legislation that, again, you bring it to the floor. We filed it. I know it got Rule 14, but we're doing it the right way. We're going to ask for a cloture vote on it. Get it on the floor, open it up to amendments, perfect it. See what the body of the Senate wants to do with this piece of legislation that, again, we probably agree 95% of it or higher. The way to do it is when I offer my bill and we vote on cloture, vote for cloture. Let's get on the bill. Let's start discussing today. I mean, maybe if we're so successful, maybe if we find the differences are so slight, we can pass it by UC later in the day. But we do need to take this back to our conferences. We do need to go to ledge staff. We need to perfect this. It'll probably take more time. But again, passing it by unanimous consent is not the way to do it. Just isn't. I mean, I appreciate the attempt. I appreciate the dialogue. And that's what I'm asking you in all sincerity, for the benefit of those 2.8 million workers, our military, our law enforcement. Let's take that burden off them today. Let's give them some hope to know this body is going to finally do something in a nonpartisan, I call it a nonpartisan way, that we all agree on. We're going to work out, we're going to iron out our differences the way you would generally do it, the way it used to be done, by getting onto a bill, voting for cloture, having the will of the Senate work its way, and then hopefully pass it early next week. That would be my suggestion. Again, I'd be willing to do it today. I don't think we could probably handle that because there's things to discuss. That's all I'm asking.
If gentlemen will yield, look, thank you. Look, it'd be great to work this out because there seems to be some agreement that federal employees should not be the ones to bear the burden of a decision they had nothing to do with. I see the Republican leaders here with us on the floor. I think the best way to proceed would be to delay moving forward on the cloture vote on the motion to proceed on your bill, and let's sit down and let's talk about whether or not we can find that common ground. We may not be that far apart. I will just say to the senator, I would say that if you give the president the authority, as your proposal currently does, to decide who to send home and furlough and punish, it sounds like you're willing to change that, but here's the scenario I worry about. If you listen to Russ Vought and the president, they would just fire those people. during the shutdown. That's what they're doing. In fact, they're illegally firing people during the shutdown.
Again, Senator, I really didn't want to come and argue. I really.
Okay, well, why don't we sit down? Why don't we sit down together?
I have to dispute that, because even the National Active and Retired Federation Employees Association, who has endorsed my bill, says the bill does not single out favored political functions over disfavored ones. And you understand, under the Anti-Deficiency Act, under the opinions from the Office of Legal Counsel, accepted employees, it's pretty well standard. There may be some tweaks back and forth, which is what you give the latitude of the executive branch. Again, I'm willing to sit down. I'm sure the Republican Congress is willing to sit down and go, okay, what should we do? I think Congress has given way too much authority to the executive branch. I don't mind dialing that back a little bit. But again, the way to approach that is let's get on the bill. Let's talk about it. Let's offer amendments, amendments that pass by voice vote, and let's get it done. There's a lot of pressure on all of us. We all want to get this done. But again, passing by unanimous consent is not the way to get it done. The way to get it done is the way the process should work. I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful to actually see the process work in the Senate? Again, I realize you don't like. You don't agree 100% on my bill. So
I would love to see the process work.
And then let's sit down in good faith. Let's hammer out amendments and let's get the thing passed next week. Let's do that. That's all I'm asking. Again, I honestly hate to object to this. I don't want to. Okay. But again, this is not the way to pass it. So again, I'll speak to my bill. I know we've got to get votes for that kind of stuff. But again, truthfully, I'm in as good a faith as I possibly can be. We have to get this done. And the way to do that is vote to get on the bill. Let's sit down and talk in good faith, and let's see and hammer out what it might be pretty minor differences when all's said and done, okay? But with that,
well let me just say, Mr. President, and just to say to the Senator Johnson, I'm more than happy to sit down with you. I think we should do that maybe later today, get our teams together, see if we can resolve some of these points. Because if we have the shared view that, number one, no federal employee should be punished for something they had nothing to do with, and that at least for the period of the shutdown, the president should not be able to fire additional people, which is, I think you well know, and this was partly considered by the federal court already, the president actually has less authority to do in a shutdown than when the government's open. But I don't want to debate these issues on the floor right now.
Sure.
I am more than happy to try and sit down with your team and see if we can
Let me quick address that. I think this brinkmanship has got to end here. I mean, I've been here 15 years. We should have passed 180 appropriation bills. Before the start of the fiscal year, we've passed 6. Again, a lot of people working in good faith to do that, okay? It's obviously broken. We've got to start working on appropriation and budget reform. We've got to start working on that together, okay? But my guess is part of what's happening with the reduction in force is that brinkmanship, trying to get you folks to just agree to what you've done 13 times. Just open up the government, and then we'll talk, okay? We're more than open to talk. But anyway, so again, I'm literally begging you, please.
Well,
when we vote on cloture, vote to get on the bill, and then let's go through the amendment process, and let's get it done quick. Again, there's not that big a difference. We can get this done, but again, I hate to do this, but with that, I will object, and just, again, beg.
Objection heard.
Let's get on the bill.
Mr. President.
Senator from Maryland.
As I said to the senator from Wisconsin, I'm happy to sit down with him and his team to see if we can put together a proposal based on the principle that no federal employee should have to bear the burden and the pain of a decision they had nothing to do with, as well as many of these federal contractors who are also involved. So I welcome the chance to sit down with the senator from Wisconsin. I also hope that the President of the United States will sit down with Democrats to resolve the overall issue and open the government. That way, we wouldn't even have to go through this exercise right now. With that, I want to yield the floor to my colleague from Maryland, Senator Alsobrooks.